colleague and Deputy Commissioner.
Hi, I'm Kim Smith.
And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a briefing intended for legislators. Legislators have the ability to unmute themselves during the presentation, as well as to put questions in the chat. We have received several questions ahead of time, and we've prepared a slide deck that we will go through and then open it up for questions once we get through the slide deck. This is also being live streamed on Facebook. Folks watching on Facebook, we will check those comments or questions afterward and then try to integrate those either into the next presentation that we do or post answers on our frequently asked questions. So those are two good places to look for specific answers to questions. Today we're going to do just a very, very top line overview of unemployment insurance because there may be some folks who are not as familiar with the program. Talk a little bit about the contributory or direct reimbursable employers. Talk about the various programs that have been in effect since March because of the pandemic and the emergency action taken by Congress. Walk through the unemployment process, including appeals, because I know many people are starting to get into that section of the process, and not everyone is familiar with all of the various steps and appeal processes that people can go through. And then we will look at some of the numbers that we're seeing in terms of claims and cases that are in fact filing. Do a quick update on some of the things that we're seeing around fraud. And I think that's pretty much the top line overview. Please feel free to put questions in the chat box as we go along, and then we will get to, I hope, if we haven't answered your questions as we're going through the presentation, I hope that we'll be able to answer all of the questions that you put in the chat. So with that, let's just kind of kick off. And what is unemployment insurance? Basically, unemployment insurance is a partial wage replacement for people who have lost their job through no fault of their own. They must meet certain monetary eligibility requirements. They must be able to work, available to work, and actively seeking work. And those are kind of the core principles. The trust fund is paid for by employers. There are roughly 45,000 employers in the state who contribute to the unemployment insurance trust fund. Any of the funds that are put in the trust fund can only be used to pay benefits. We've received some questions about what does it mean to be able and available to work? And that typically means that you must be, if you were offered a job during that week, that you would physically be able to respond to that job request. So it means if you are on vacation, that doesn't count as being able and available. And if you are only able to work part of the week, you may be eligible for partial benefits. One of the questions that we're seeing come up frequently is what if you're sick or had some sort of tragic physical event. Let's say that you, either you're suffering from some sort of a serious illness and you're homesick. Unemployment insurance is not a temporary disability program. And I know that can be surprising because it's obviously you're out of work and you're not able to go there and you're looking for some sort of a safety net. The unemployment insurance program is not a temporary disability program though. I think that not everyone is aware of that. Kim, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered that.
Okay, next slide, please. The other question that we're getting is what's the difference between a contributory employer and a direct reimbursable employer? as I explained on the previous slide, contributory employers pay a small amount into the trust fund on on the first $12,000 of wages for their employees. Last year, that amount, I'm trying to remember what the average amount was, but it is, there are different ranges depending on the experience the employer has. So if you're an employer who typically lays off many employees, you're going to be paying more into the trust fund than if you're someone who rarely, if ever, lays employees off. Because of the pandemic, and so many employers were required because of health reasons to have, were in compliance with the governor's stay-at-home order and to help keep from spreading COVID, the employer's experience rating was not being charged in the past year because of layoffs that were due to COVID. So contributory employers are about 45,000. Direct reimbursable employers are employers whose employees, if they met all of that criteria, lost their job through no fault of their own, were able and available, had met the monetary requirements, are covered by unemployment benefits. But these direct reimbursable employers who are nonprofits, government, schools, they can choose to not pay into the trust fund, but rather when their employees are laid off, they pay dollar for dollar whatever the employee's benefit is when that benefit is used. Again, because there was a recognition that direct reimbursable employers were going to be impacted by COVID, Congress back in the spring passed legislation that said rather than having direct reimbursable employers pay 100% of those costs the way they normally would, they are only required to pay 50% and reimburse the trust fund for 50% of what the actual benefit amount was. Again, normally if there's a delay in payment, the department would assess interest or penalties. And again, in recognition that this has been an unprecedented time, we are not doing any interest or penalties, at least through March of 2021.
And I would just add to that, that the original CARES Act set up that 50% as a reimbursement to those entities. So in essence, we would have had to bill those agencies for 100% of the cost. They would have paid the Department of Labor 100% and then being reimbursed the 50%. We knew that would be something that governments, nonprofits weren't going to be able to do. So we did hold off on billing. Congress later did act to change that so that they only had to pay their 50% upfront.
Right, and that was the delay on our side. Thanks for pointing that out, Kim, because we, like states across the country, were working with our congressional representatives to try to get it to be just bill for the 50% rather than the previous way it was laid out. Kim, do you want to take the next slide on transitioning through the unemployment programs?
Sure, because it certainly did get a whole lot more complex with the pandemic and the CARES Act. Good programs, but it can be confusing because you hear all those acronyms, UI, PEUC, EB, PUA, and what does it mean and what is somebody on? So for the traditional unemployment recipient, that's somebody who, as the commissioner described, worked in covered employment, who lost their job through no fault of their own. They would apply for, I'll call it regular state unemployment, we call it UI. And that is for up to 26 weeks worth of benefits. And we say up to because it depends on how much an individual earned in their base period. So it could range, it could be less than 26 weeks. Assuming it is 26 weeks, once somebody completed or drew down all of that money, they would then move into the PEUC, which is a new federal program. It's the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program. And that provides 13 weeks of benefits to people that exhausted all of their state unemployment. Once those 13 weeks are up, then somebody would move into the Extended Benefits Program. And that is a program that it's actually a state program, state-federal partnership, where traditionally the state and the federal government split the cost of those benefits. The CARES Act did include 100% funding of extended benefits as long as the state remained active. So having a state be eligible for extended benefits means that our insured unemployment is above 5%, and it's more than 120% of the average for the period for the previous 2 years. So it looks at what is our insured unemployment rate, and then how does it compare to the previous 2 years. And I want to point out that that insured unemployment rate is different than the unemployment rate that is put out on a monthly basis. It's calculated differently in federal law and in state law. It's based on the number of claims that we receive, basically. We triggered on for extended benefits back in May, but that's when most folks were collecting UI and PEUC. Now that the weekly claims that are coming in for state unemployment are cycling down, we have, in essence, triggered off. The extended benefits program is ending. So the last week that extended benefits was available was last week, the week ending November 14th. When people either exhaust all of their extended benefits, or if the program ended, there is the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. That's available for up to 39 weeks. So earlier when I said somebody could receive up to 26 weeks of unemployment, let's say they qualified for 20 weeks. And then they went through PEUC, and then they went into extended benefits, and they were only able to collect 10 weeks of the extended benefits. So they collected 20 weeks of unemployment, 10 weeks of extended benefits. That's 30 weeks of benefits under those two programs. That gets deducted from the 39 weeks. So those individuals would be eligible to receive up to 9 more weeks of pandemic unemployment assistance. Both PEUC and PUA are federal programs, and those are based on the CARES Act, will end here with the week ending December 26th. So that means people can file their claims after December 26th, but the last week for which they can file a claim is December 26th. Payments for those weeks will certainly go through New Year's and into January.
And one of the things that we didn't talk about was what is Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, the PUA. The requirements for that program are that someone must not be eligible for any state unemployment insurance program. So this is for people who are self-employed, gig workers, may not have met that monetary eligibility requirement. So this emergency program was put in place in recognition that the economy has changed, that there are many people who are working who would not be covered by traditional unemployment insurance. But again, for folks in this program, it's a maximum of up to 39 weeks of benefits, or until December 26th. And it's whichever comes first. It's, so if someone started applying in February, they would be running out of their 39 weeks of benefits. They could be running out of their 39 weeks of benefits now, because we're in about week 36 from March.
And so those folks aren't going back and forth between different programs, UI, the PEUC, EB. And because it is a program that is for people who are not otherwise eligible for state unemployment, that's why PUA can come in after EB, because they have exhausted all of their eligibility. They're no longer eligible for state unemployment. Right. So there may be a few weeks that those folks can pick up as well.
Okay.
We get a lot of questions about what are folks supposed to, if we could just flip back to that previous slide, what are folks supposed to do when they get to the end of their program? They have 0, they see a 0 as their remaining eligibility in the system. We do encourage them to continue filing their weekly certifications. It is our hope that Congress takes action and extends any or all of these programs. So having those weekly certifications on file will definitely be to our advantage. We can get through them faster, and to the people's advantage as well.
Okay.
And I'm all set. We can go to the next slide. So this is a kind of a graph of the process that somebody would go through when they're filing for an unemployment claim. So starting in the upper left corner, it's filing your initial claim. That's your application for unemployment benefits. And then on a weekly basis, you have to file weekly certifications where you continue to let us know that you're able to work, you're available to work, you're looking for work when that applies. But it's not really a one and done. There are other things that could happen. So after you file your initial claim, we look at two categories of eligibility. The first is what we call monetary eligibility. So that means how much did the individual earn in their base period, which really we're looking back at the last 18 months of employment. And what Maine law says is that an individual for 4 consecutive quarters within that 18-month period have to have earned at least about $1,700 in the quarter, 2 quarters. And then over the entire 4-quarter period, they have to have earned about $5,400. So that's the monetary eligibility. And then the second eligibility is, why is the person out of work? Does it meet the eligibility criteria? Is it no fault of their own? That kind of thing. So an individual will get 2 determinations from us. They'll get their monetary determination, and then their, well, we call it non-monetary, real creative, I know, but both of those determinations come with appeal rights. So usually the monetary determination is only appealable by the individual because that's what they see. But the separation determination is appealable by both the individual as well as their former employer. So if the employer disagrees, if we allowed benefits, they can file an appeal. If both parties go through the appeal process and there's still disagreement on the decision, that claim is then appealable to the Unemployment Insurance Commission. That's a separate entity from the Department of Labor, but they are the higher level appeal, as we call it. And then again, if there's still disagreement on the decision, the claim is appealable to Superior Court. So that's on the initial claim process. We drop down to the bottom of the slide where we're talking about the weekly certifications. There can be issues that are detected on a weekly certification. Work search comes up. We get a lot of questions on that recently, but there can be questions about somebody's ability to work that for a week, or were they able to work. So if we detect an issue on somebody's weekly certification, we'll set up a fact finding. It's important to note, if we have been paying them, they will continue to be paid until we have the fact finding and a decision is issued. If they disagree with the decision of the adjudicator, that is certainly appealable to our Division of Administrative Hearings. And that, again, if there's a disagreement there, the individual can appeal to the Unemployment Insurance Commission. So it can be a lengthy process. It's not just a one and done. So there are multiple layers to it. Laura, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I'll pick up on what you're saying, though, Kim, on the next slide.
Okay.
So as you heard the Deputy Commissioner say, we'll continue to make certain payments as people are waiting for their, to go through their appeal rights. That means that people may be receiving an unemployment benefit, and when all of the appeals are exhausted, it may be determined that they were not, in fact, eligible to receive those benefits. And that is how overpayments are caused. If there is an overpayment, the claimant would be required to repay any of those benefits that they received that it was determined that they were not eligible for. One of the things that's important to note is that with some of these federal programs, such as pandemic unemployment assistance, the department cannot waive benefits. So if benefits were given under PUA and it is determined that the person was not eligible to receive those benefits, we have no ability to waive those payments. Normally on regular UI, we look at, you know, why was the overpayment created in the first place? And we have some flexibility in that space. But at this point in time, there is no flexibility for the department to waive those PUA benefits. LWA, which we did not talk about, was Lost Wage Assistance Program. This was a program that was created through federal emergency management assistance money. It was time limited. It was a 6-week program, and you had to have been receiving unemployment benefits between August 1st and September 5th in order to be eligible for these $300 payments. The department also has no ability to waive any LWA payments that were paid out and it's determined that the person was not eligible. What's interesting is that we have no ability to waive the payments, but we have the responsibility to go back to do audits and to make sure that that the information that was provided to us was accurate, and to collect any of those overpayments. So all of this information is included in the weekly certification when someone fills it out, because they are required to fill out on a week-by-week basis and attest that that the information that they're providing is accurate. I just wanted to raise this in case people had any questions about overpayments. What we are doing with our colleagues across the country, as well as the National Association of State Workforce Agencies, is we're asking Congress to look at whether or not they could modify the restrictions that are placed about not being able to waive any overpayments. So we'll see how that goes.
And I do want to clarify, there's a statement on there that says overpayments issued for PUA benefits, LWA payments, or due to fraud cannot be waived. And I just do want to clarify that if someone's been the victim of identity theft, we're not coming after them for repayment of those monies. We're talking about fraudulently provided information, but not identity theft.
Right. Right. And you know, and I don't know that we're going to be talking a lot about fraud today, but the state of Maine unemployment insurance program, just like unemployment insurance programs all across the country, have been victims of criminal fraudulent attacks. And we would not want to be waiving. We are vigorously pursuing a collection of any payments that were paid out to fraudsters. So that's not the kind of fraud that we're not advocating that we would waive any fraudulent payments. Okay. So we're also starting to receive questions about what happens if someone is found, you know, you saw it's a very long process. You know, for most people, it's fairly quick to go through the unemployment insurance process. If you meet all of the eligibility requirements, if your situation is fairly straightforward, the ability to go through the program, receive benefits, and continue receiving benefits in a steady manner is pretty easy. But if you have a complex situation, it can take time. And that was what you saw the Deputy Commissioner walk through. And so we are starting to hear what happens if there is a problem and your eligibility isn't determined until after these programs exhaust on December 26th. Because the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program is structured to comply more closely with regular unemployment insurance rules, regulations, and guidelines, as long as they meet those eligibility guidelines, even if it's determined after December 26th, we would still be able to repay them. The Lost Wage Assistance Program is different. There was a limited amount of money that each state was given based on some projections. And when that money runs out, and when the program is closed out by FEMA, there would be no mechanism for going back. At this point in time, we still have money, and there are some people who are still going through the fact-finding process. And so they would be able to receive the lost wage assistance funding. And again, you can see the numbers that we paid 71,675 people the lost wage assistance benefit so far. And there are a small number, a handful of people that are still going through the process. Kim, is there anything there that you want to add?
Nope, not on these programs. I'm all set.
Okay. Okay, status of initial claims being processed. So we have a total of about 517 people who are in the process of having their benefits determined. About 168 of them are in what we call a pending status, and that means that we need some additional information from them. There may have been a discrepancy about a name mismatch or an item like that we just need to clarify before we can move forward. The 82 that we have, they're part of our normal process. I mean, you heard the deputy commissioner talk about the employer has there's contact with the employer. It's unemployment insurance is not only a federal state partnership, it's also a partnership with the employer and the employee. The employee gives us some information, the employer gives us some information. And part of that is a notification that goes to the employer. We call it the B1, that's just the number that's on the form, where the employer has 10 to 14 days to verify the information that we have received. We are waiting for about 82 of those, and normally that's a 10-day to 2-week process to receive that. So that amount is very straightforward. We have about 11 people that we are determining they've been reviewed for unemployment insurance. That's the first step that someone needs to go through. We have to see, are you eligible for state unemployment insurance? If you are not eligible for state unemployment insurance, then it's, are you eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance? So it's a 2-step process. We have about 11 people in that category right now. And we have 256 people who are in the fact-finding process. So there was something that they said on their initial claim that we need to ask some additional questions about. Several months ago, there was there were long waits because we were dealing with, we went from having 630 some initial claims in, the first week in March to over 20,000 initial claims the following week, and an additional 30,000 claims the week after that, and an additional 20,000 claims the week after that. So we just had a rapid influx of claims. We have worked through those backlogs, and we're at a level right now, which is within our normal kind of 2-week operating time frame. And on the next slide, we'll go through what's happening, I think a little bit more in depth about fact finding. So this gives you a good sense of what's happening. Kim, do you want to walk through this?
Sure. So as you can see, the majority of individuals who are waiting for their fact finding are from November. 175 out of the roughly 250 people have just filed their claim this month. 67 of them are from October, 11 are from September, and 3 from August. And we have people come in and out of unemployment. So for instance, sometimes we have earlier months come up, someone may have filed their initial claim, started receiving benefits, and then went back to work part-time. And now that they're out of work again, so they've reopened their claim, so they would appear on here again, as because we need to conduct a fact finding to figure out what happened, you know, in the interim, and get them back on their programs where appropriate. So I wouldn't say that we've had people that have been hanging out there from August. We have people come in and out of the system.
Mm-hmm. And we've made changes to how we're handling fact findings to expedite it. We look at these numbers every single day to make sure that if there are bottlenecks, and come up with ways to expedite finding a resolution, either getting people their benefits, or denying benefits if that's the appropriate course of action. And again, anytime until you go to court, if either the employer or the employee disagrees with the decision, there is a process for people to go through to have their appeal rights protected. Okay, next slide. Work search related activities. As I had said at the beginning, you know, normally work search is a key piece of unemployment insurance. It's unemployment insurance is temporary partial wage replacement. The goal is to help people as they're looking for new jobs, to support them as they're doing that, and to help them get back to work as quickly as they can. The pandemic has created some unique circumstances. There is still a commitment to keep people connected to the workforce. And in response to that, what we have done is really expanded what's being considered work-related and skill development. The goal is to make sure that if people can enhance their skills, that they have opportunities to do that, and that we connect them to jobs in using virtual tools, and as well as many employers are offering remote work and trying to connect people to that. So skill development, part-time work is also considered satisfying the requirements of work search. In the past, if you had lost a full-time job and you were able to find part-time work, you would have still been expected to be looking for that full-time job in addition to working your part-time job. We've recognized that some employers have been able to bring people back on a part-time basis, but not full-time, and that part-time work is considering satisfying your work search requirement. We do have information through the career centers, and we do have frequently asked questions up on our website that provide additional information about this. And the link with the career centers has been even stronger during this pandemic than it had prior to the pandemic. Although we always work together, but there's additional services that are available now than there were before, particularly virtual workshops. Okay, as we said earlier, pandemic unemployment assistance is for people who may be gig workers or they may be self-employed. So we were hearing, you know, what would a work search look like for someone who is self-employed? And what these are kind of, you know, common sense activities that any business owner would be engaged in, of, you know, how do you strengthen your business? Is there a workshop that you can participate in through the Office of Business Development? Are there virtual networking events you could be engaged in? Are there different skills that you can be learning to enhance your marketing? The goal is to make sure that as you're bringing your business back up, that it is as, at least that you're able to position yourself the way that you had prior to the pandemic, and if not, you know, are there adjustments that you need to be making, and are there skills that you can be developing in order to strengthen your business as you're bringing it back. And if some people say, forget it, I'm not interested in self-employment anymore, or the gig economy is not working for me, then it would be the traditional work search activities, the expanded work search activities that we would be looking at you participating in. Okay, so we have, as I said earlier, we, like every other department of labor across the country, have been victims of criminal attacks, and those attacks change on a regular basis. We have recently seen some phishing expeditions. We are, anytime we see anything new or we hear anything new from our colleagues from across the country, we address it immediately. And we try to inform any of the claimants. But some of the things that we need people to do is to just be vigilant, to verify their payment information, and looking at, don't be using the same password for your unemployment insurance claims as you're using for other online accounts. One of the most significant mechanisms that fraudsters were using is purchasing data that had been stolen from data breaches across the country. They're purchasing that information on the dark web and then using that information in different ways. So if anyone has had their data breached at any one of those large scale data breaches that we've heard about over the past years, it doesn't have to have just happened recently. What they do is they take this information and then they auction it off, and then they use it in different ways. So we're just saying, please make sure that you're not using the same password. Please be vigilant, and please verify that communication that seems, suspicious is that you verify those communications with us. Kim, anything else you want to add there?
That's great advice, be it for our unemployment system or any of the other systems that folks use. Use unique passwords, use strong passwords. Make sure you're double checking things that you're clicking on in emails. I would say most things that we send out, an individual can follow up on by logging into their online account. And when there are things that are not in the account, we put it on our homepage. So that would be a good place to check if you aren't certain. And then if you're still not sure, give us a call. I know earlier in the weeks, it's harder to get through on the telephone line. Mondays and Tuesdays, we have a lot of folks that call. Wednesdays, Thursdays, and definitely into Fridays, usually wait times are minimal.
Okay, for Thanksgiving, we will be processing unemployment payments. Anytime that there is a bank holiday or the bank is closed, there's going to be usually a 24 to a 48-hour delay in processing. We will put that information up on our website as always, but that's just because of the fact that we can't process checks if the banks are not open. Our call center, our 800 number, will be taking calls the day after Thanksgiving between 8 and 3. We will be working on things like initial claims, reopening claims, because as Kim said earlier, some of what we're seeing is maybe someone was unemployed back in the spring, they've been able to work over the summer, and now they're reopening a claim. now. So we'll work with folks on reopening claims, the weekly claims, unemployment insurance. You must file a claim every week in order to receive your benefit. We'll help people with password resets and address changes. If people have questions about things that are beyond that scope, we ask them to please call the following Monday when we will have a wider range of folks available to answer and deal with those questions. Anything else?
So we do have a few questions in the chat. So our first question is about our accommodations for people who have hearing loss, not necessarily those who are able to communicate with TTY, but those who are having difficulty hearing over the telephone. What is our process for assisting them? So I would say that we want to know if individuals need an accommodation. We do ask about it on the initial claim, but that's not the only time that you're able to tell us about it. Certainly we'll have somebody reach out to you to find out what happened with this individual that you're referencing. But we do provide accommodations. We can conduct business with email. We have an online messaging portal where people can leave us messages as well, but we will figure out how to get those services provided.
And Senator Vitale, you asked about Maine enterprise option. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You would know this better than anyone because in a previous life you worked on that. That was a program that was available years ago, but it is not available now. And the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program made it possible to provide unemployment insurance benefits to people who are self-employed. Representative Wood, first of all, congratulations. And your question is, when the pandemic began, we couldn't handle people who were self-employed. It wasn't so much, we had to put the program in place and it took a little while. I think we were up and running on May 1st. So since May 1st, yeah, the system, it's not a manual process. People apply online the same as for regular unemployment insurance. The difference with that is that if people are self-employed, they need to provide tax data to verify the amount that they will receive, because just as regular unemployment insurance, you look at wages, there's a range. The amount that someone receives in unemployment insurance is based on their previous earnings. So right now, the minimum benefit is about $80 a week, and it goes up to $462. And for the pandemic unemployment assistance, the minimum benefit is $172, but it would also go up to that maximum of $462. And we would, with someone who's covered by traditional unemployment insurance, we have wage data from employers. If you're self-employed, we would not have that, and so we have to use tax data. And we now have again, a system where that you can, the claimant can just upload that data through a secure system directly into the Reemploy Me program. So those are all up and running.
Are there any other questions? And feel free to unmute if you'd like to ask that way.
Okay. If not, thank you. We will continue to, post new information on the website. I think the message that we have right now is that we do know that unless Congress takes action, there are roughly 29,000 people who are currently enrolled in the federal programs, and that will all end on December 26th, unless Congress acts. That number, you know, it changes week to week. People find jobs, their circumstances change, new people come on, but it's roughly 29,000 people. And then an additional 4,000 to 6,000 people who are covered by state unemployment benefits, that will also be in that mix. So it's a significant number of people.
I did have one other question for anybody else who's new to the legislature. We've been getting emails pretty regularly now from Representative Michelle Dunphy, with a little chart that tells us, you know, the number of cases that there are and how many have been resolved. And I have figured out the chart, but I still have one question that she will often make a comment like this one says, 2 resolutions are from our caucus. So I'm not quite sure what that means.
So Representative, I think that's an internal legislative document, not something from the Department of Labor. I know that, you know, that there are, we receive requests from legislators to look into cases, and we do, and then we respond back. So I think that's probably something that the caucus is.
So something that came from a legislator directly,
Right.
They had a constituent contact them, and that is tracked that it came from us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually, Barb, this is Lois. The routine is to tell your legislative aide you have a particular problem,
Okay.
the constituent, and the aide then goes from there to the process that you're referring to. So you don't need to call the department yourself. Just talk to your legislative aide if you have one yet. Have you been assigned them yet?
No, we haven't been assigned them yet. And many questions that I ask, I'm told, well, your aide will do that. And
Right, yeah.
I don't have an aide yet,
Yeah.
but they must be very busy once we
Yeah,
get
they are. Yeah, and they've got 15 people they're dealing with. Give me a call offline, Barb, and I'll try to talk you through how
Okay.
that felt and how it resolved.
All right. Thanks, Lois.
And I would just like to introduce myself. I'm Mary Ann Tarowski, for those of you, for the new legislators on board. I am a senior policy advisor with Governor Mills, and honored to have the Department of Labor as colleagues I work with on almost a daily basis. And I also am available for questions as well, usually not individual constituents, because you do have the process of the legislative aid, or perhaps some general policy questions if you want to put that through me. So I just wanted to introduce myself. Welcome aboard to the newcomers to the legislature.
Okay. Well, with that, thank you. And again, congratulations. And we look forward to working with you.